Welcome to Stories from the Back with Jan, a quiet place for families, educators and experts to come together and build confident learners from the very beginning. I'm Jan. Let's begin. Before confidence, before skills, there's something even simpler: wonder. Welcome to Stories from the Mat with Jan. I'm Jan Falconer. I'm a wife, mother, sister, cousin, aunt, nonna, and a children's author, and someone who's spent a lifetime watching children learn. Now, the last time we met together in episode 4, we reflected on how children grow in confidence. Today, I'd like us to step back even further. My conversation last week, in episode 5, with children's author Julie Ball, left me thinking about something even simpler: wonder. What struck me was how Julie's story began, not with a grand adventure, not with an exotic journey. It began with something wonderfully ordinary: a cinnamon broomstick hanging from her front door. One morning she noticed a tiny gecko peeping out from behind it. Most of us would have smiled and thought, well, that's lovely, and carried on our day. Julie noticed. She paused. She became curious. And because she noticed, Tucker's story began. It made me wonder how many stories begin because someone notices. They notice something the rest of us simply walk past. Julie shared another image that stayed with me. She said she still gets down on her hands and knees in the garden because she wants to see the world through the eyes of a child. I love that. I do that too. Children live closer to the ground than we do. They notice the ants carrying something far bigger than themselves, the dew resting on a spider's web, a bee disappearing inside a flower, a tiny movement in the leaves that tells them there's probably a little lizard hiding there. While we're often looking ahead or the next thing on our list, children are completely absorbed by what's happening right in front of them. Perhaps that's one of childhood's greatest gifts: the ability to notice. As I listened to Julie, I found myself thinking about developmental psychologist Alison Gopnik. She often describes children as natural scientists. You see, children investigate, they observe, they experiment, not because someone tells them to, but because curiosity comes naturally. Think about those garden kitchens. I know my grandchildren have one, and it can drive you crazy when you see them mixing potions, but they experiment. Julie described exactly that. Tucker doesn't simply look at a flamingo. He wants to know what it feels like to stand on one leg. Children don't just want to watch the world. They want to imagine themselves inside it. That isn't simply play. It's learning. One of my favourite moments in our conversation came when Julie talked about not looking for teachable moments. Instead, she encourages family to slow down and let children lead. I think that's such a refreshing thought. As adults, we sometimes feel we should explain everything, answer every question, turn every walk into a lesson. Perhaps we don't. Perhaps our role is simply to walk alongside children, to follow their curiosity, and to be just as interested in what captures their attention as they are. That thought resonated with me. because writing the Suki stories has taught me something very similar. People sometimes ask me where my ideas come from. The truth is, they seldom arrive because I've gone out looking for them. Most of them begin because I've noticed something. A look from Suki, a twitch of her ear, one of the barn cats doing something unexpected, an ordinary moment that suddenly becomes extraordinary because I stopped long enough to notice it. Perhaps that's exactly what Julie did with Tucker. She noticed, and the story followed. When I read Tucker's adventure, my own grandchildren, it wasn't only the animals that they remembered, it was Tucker's bravery. I can be brave, just like Tucker. Now that stayed with me because good stories often do that. They begin with one character's adventure, but quietly become part of a child's own story. Children borrow courage, kindness, curiosity, hope, almost without realizing it. I am also reminded of something Rachel Carson wrote in The Sense of Wonder. She wrote, "If facts are the seeds that produce knowledge, then emotions and impressions are the fertile soil in which seeds grow." I think Julie understands that instinctively. She doesn't begin by teaching children about wildlife. She invites them to fall in love with it first. The learnings come afterwards, and perhaps that's why her book works so beautifully. It doesn't simply tell children about geckos and butterflies or manatees. It encourages them to go outside and notice the creatures living in their own world. It sends them back onto nature with fresh eyes. As our conversation came to an end, Julie returned to that gentle invitation. Slow down. Notice. Let children lead. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that perhaps wonder doesn't disappear as we grow older. Maybe it simply becomes crowded out by our busy diaries, shopping lists, deadlines, and the next things we think we have to do. Children quietly remind us that another way is possible. It begins with one butterfly, one gecko, one flower, one question, one moment of paying attention. Perhaps that's a lovely thing about Tucker's story. His story didn't begin because Julie set out to write a book. It began because she noticed a tiny gecko behind a cinnamon broom. One small moment, one curious glance, one decision to pay attention. Perhaps that's how wonder always begins. Not with something extraordinary, but with ordinary things seen a little more carefully. So the next time a child says, "Look at that," perhaps we should stop and look too, because we may discover that learning and wonder have been waiting for us all along. Until next time, this has been Stories from the Mat with Jan, a quiet place to think, notice, and begin. So thank you for joining me. Until the next time, take care.